And so we are honored today to have the Tennessee Department of Correction with us. Notice it's correction and not shuns, right? Okay, a lot of people don't know that, mispronounce it. So, and they are with our probation and parole, is what they do. So, I'll talk a little bit about what they're doing. And they have one of my great friends who is actually the human resource. I'm going to call her the manager. We're just going to go ahead and say she's a. And so, Miss Judy will introduce herself in just a second. And we'll go from there. And they do a very important job. I know that we're only in week 3 and we haven't talked about intermediate sanctions and we haven't talked about that type of stuff. But it'll make a lot more sense when we get to it after these folks talk. So they do a very important job. My wife worked for these folks before she got hired with the Tennessee Alcohol Beverage Commission. So anyway, she enjoyed her time there and really found out quickly that these folks are overworked and probably underpaid. So you don't have to say anything on the camera, but there you go. So go ahead and introduce yourselves. You guys are up and running, and I'm recording.
Okay. Hi, I'm Judy Henson. I have been with the Department of Correction for 25 years. Next month, I just recently switched in June, transferred to Probation and Parole. So I do the HR part for District 10. We serve, I think there's 7 counties. I'm still becoming familiar with Probation and Parole. So this is kind of a learning experience for me too, as far as the presentation we're going to do. But it is a great career, great benefits, a retirement plan. I would strongly encourage everyone to pursue a career with a state entity. I prefer correction. It was close to home when I took the job, and I've had a very good career, met a lot of nice people along the way. But that's all I have. I'll be here for any questions you might have regarding benefits, pay, that sort of thing. Otherwise, the ones who do this every day can tell you all about the job.
And you could also probably tell them later on if they're interested in working in prison, correct?
Yeah.
Even though that's where she was, not inside the prison, literally as an inmate, but she worked there and actually hired a number of our students. And actually, they get paid rather well now for what they do. So, if you're interested in that, there's something else to think about. Ma'am, go ahead.
Hi guys, my name is Juliana Miller. I've been with TDOC for approximately 4 years. I'm a probation officer. I only handle probation, so I don't do parole or anything like that. I handle ICOTS cases, which when we get into our presentation, I'll kind of go into that and what that is. As far as educational background, I have a bachelor's in general psychology and a bachelor's in criminal justice. I will say, kind of going off what Judy said, I didn't anticipate to go into corrections, and when I first started, it wasn't necessarily something that I thought I would enjoy, but I really, really do love working for the department. I really enjoy my job, and we do a lot of important work. And I think sometimes people don't really know what probation entails, so I hope we clear up a lot of questions and kind of give you guys some good information. That way you guys can take this into consideration if you guys, graduate with your degrees in criminal justice or whatever your degrees may be in. They don't have to be specific to criminal justice. But so yeah, I hope that we answer all your questions, and I hope you guys consider us in the future.
I'm Officer Trey Cook. I've been with the department 4 years. I actually went to the academy with Julian. Educational background, I went to ETSU straight out of high school, graduated in 3.5 years, went and got my master's from ETSU, did a little bit of teaching, undergraduate classes during my master's program. Really enjoyed it. Came out, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I did not think about corrections at all. I started doing armed security at Holston Ammunition Plant. I hated it so much that I applied for everything and anything. Landed at the Tennessee Department of Correction. Luckily, it was complete by chance. I was scrolling on LinkedIn. They had a couple postings. I applied for the sex offender unit, got hired there, and I've been with them ever since. I only do sex offenders. So there's a regular side of the house that does everybody else. Then we have a sex offender specific unit. There's about 10 of us in that unit that cover everywhere from Johnson County to Morristown. I think that's just about it as far as my background goes. I'm here to answer any questions. I've enjoyed working for the Tennessee Department of Correction. They've given me a lot. They've invested a lot into me, offered me a lot of different trainings that I've enjoyed. It kind of set me up for success if I ever wanted to move up or leave the department. They set me up for being successful in my career, not just in TDOC, but outside.
Okay, we'll get into it. Okay, so in this PowerPoint, we're going to go over kind of just an overview of everything. Supervision practices, that does include our sanctions, home visits, things like that, reentry simulation, home visits, and we'll do a review and answer any questions you guys might have. Okay, so when I first started, I wasn't 100% sure what the difference between probation and parole was. Pretty simple. So probation is granted by your judges, okay? And your parole is granted by your parole board. Judges cannot grant parole, and the parole board cannot grant probation. So a lot of times we do have individuals who are released from incarceration with a TDOC state prison, and they do have consecutive probation cases. I really can't speak too much about parole. I wish I knew a little bit more to tell y'all, but they have very similar guidelines. It's just when you go to do a violation for parole, it is the officer's responsibility to do an investigation and provide 51% burden of proof and present that to the parole board, versus we just do our violations and the court handles it. We might have to testify. We submit, whether it's screenshots or camera footage or whatever it might be to help the DAs with their cases, but we don't really have to present evidence as much as a parole officer would. Community corrections, that is your alternative sentencing for felony offenders. Here in East Tennessee, we have the Alternative Community Corrections Program, and that is ran and funded by Frontier Health. They do things very similar to us. One of the things they do that we don't do is house arrest. They do their house arrest for the first 6 months, I believe, of their supervision, and they're typically on with community corrections for a year before they're transferred to state probation if they're compliant on ACCP. They also do alcohol testing. We currently don't have alcohol testing. We just do our drug testing. So that's something kind of cool that they have that we don't. But that might be something y'all can look into, is ACCP. It's a really good experience, and they do a lot of really good work. You want me to go back?
You don't have to. It's not on there. There is one more additional thing, but it's only specific to sex offenders. We have probation, parole, but we also have community supervision for life. That's a different set of rules. It's very similar to parole, but it's when we go to do a violation of community supervision for life, it's technically new charges that we bring. So we go through each step of the process with the court, and we work with the DAs for that. It's very nuanced. It's not something that we typically talk about, but I did want to include it just in case y'all were. I do mention it later, and y'all. We do have a community supervision for life that is reserved for people that commit rape of a child, aggravated sexual battery, attempted of any of those charges. There's a good list, but those are the main ones that we see that get community supervision for life. So once they get out of prison, they are not off of supervision. Typically, your rapists, your child rapists, your sexual battery, aggravated sexual battery people, they come out and they are still supervised for at least 15 years with us.
All right, so to kind of go over an overview of the openings and the type of positions that we offer a lot more than what's on the screen. So, but these are just your general positions that make up most of TDOC, and that is your correctional officers and your probation officers. I'll kind of go a little bit more into other jobs that we have in TDOC if you guys necessarily wouldn't be interested in probation or parole or a correctional position within a prison. But we'll get into that later. So we have our probation parole officer 1. That is your probationary period. So whenever you're hired on with TDOC, they monitor your progress and improvement for the first year, and with good employee reviews, they'll move you up to a 2 after your first year of your probationary period. Most officers in the state are probation parole officers too. The 3s are usually used for specialized caseloads. So Officer Cook here is a 3. And some of the other positions we have are like our reentry officers, I believe our sanction officers, things of that nature. And then we have our probation parole managers. The managers usually supervise about 5 to 6 officers, I believe. And they just kind of monitor the work, they approve reports, and they just kind of make our life a little bit easier, and kind of jump in whenever they can. So like I said, you can see that the total supervision population, most of our individuals come from the probation side, as far as just the supervision side of things, not the prison side of things. We have a small portion on parole. It's a lot less common. And then we have our community corrections. Again, that's through ACCP. So, all right. So these are our district offices. Johnson City, that's where we're stationed. That's our district office. So we cover all of D10 right in here. Overall, we have 14 district offices, 32 field offices, and we have 15 community corrections guarantees, and then we have 7 day reporting centers. So the day reporting centers are really effective treatment centers that provide individuals with parenting classes, alcohol and drug classes, relapse prevention, all of these classes that TDOC offers for free that some states require their individuals to pay for, or maybe misdemeanor classes require them to pay for. They're all offered for free at the day reporting center. So it's also called our community resource center. As far as the actual program within the day reporting center, they have different phases, phase 1 through 4. If they are sentenced to complete the DRC with TDOC, they will go through all 4 phases. Phase 1, they are there for 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 1. And then as they phase up, they gradually go down in supervision as far as, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever it might be. Okay, supervision practices, the fun stuff. So right here is going to talk about risk assessments. There's a lot that goes into risk assessments. It's about a 15-page packet you get to do with your individuals on probation. It covers mental health information, background, criminal history, alcohol and drug use history, family, friends, everything like that. Based off the answers on the risk assessment, it measures how much of a risk they are for recidivating. So individuals who would be like homeless, maybe on disability, doesn't have a lot of resources, that individual is probably going to come back high risk because they don't have the resources they need, and the environment around them, they don't have a secure and stable environment. And they're exposed to a lot of different things usually in those situations. So our high risk is usually individuals with violent charges on their background, especially if they're placed on supervision for their violent charge. We do have, with the high risk, it's 3 times a month that they come and see us, and that's a mixture of home visits, office visits, and sometimes we try to implement virtuals because a lot of with moderates and highs, these are the people that we focus on for treatment and programming. We do have our low supervision, which is once a month, and that's just kind of us addressing any smaller issues that they may have, but kind of essentially focusing on those moderate to high risk individuals. Okay, graduated sanctions. The best way to describe graduated sanctions, and the way I describe it to my people, is we have certain behaviors that we violate for. So as far as charges, anything Class A and above in the state of Tennessee, we violate for. Anything Class B and below, we typically meet with a sanction. So your Class B and below, common ones are your criminal trespassing, your driving on suspended first, things of that nature. They get these charges, we meet them with the sanction. Some examples of the sanction are meeting with the behavioral health specialist to do an alcohol and drug assessment, which is where they'll be placed into treatment or programming of some sort, possibly implementing a curfew, additional drug screens, increased reporting, things of that nature. The idea of the graduated sanction is to document the non-compliance, but also to try to reel them back into compliance. Okay, we don't necessarily, if we can get them to comply on probation, that's what we want to do. We don't want to have to violate. So As far as fees go, your typical offender pays about $45 a month. If they're an ICOTS case, they'll pay $15. We do have some exemptions. If they have excess amounts of restitution that they're paying on monthly, we can exempt their fees for 6 months. We can exempt fees if they're on disability or retirement or anything like that. All right. So what we kind of do on a day-to-day basis. So usually throughout the week, we have certain days we do certain things on. For example, my schedule on Mondays, I do home checks with my partner. On Tuesdays, I typically work from home, and that's when I do my violation reports, warrants, my virtual calls, any type of paperwork I kind of need to get done. Wednesdays and Thursdays are my main reporting days. When I'm seeing people, we're completing paperwork, we're doing drug screens, things of that nature. So these are some of the things we monitor. We monitor arrest checks. Arrest checks is just using certain platforms like VineLink, VineWatch, and the jail rosters to see if their name appears on anything, if they've caught any new charges. Case plan monitoring. Case plans are we tailor them to fit the offender. So at the moment, we kind of come up with goals based off of the results of their risk assessment, based off of a form that we have them complete for self-report. And we try to give them the autonomy of, okay, this is what direction I want to go in. These are the goals. These are the things I want to work on. Because they're more likely to do it when they have some form of autonomy in the process. Of course, officers have to use their discretion, and, whether, they say they score high for employment, and we're like, okay, we need to get you working, things like that. So the officer does have some discretion in the case plan monitoring, but we do allow the offender to kind of come up with their own goals and things like that. Restitution is when your offender commits their crime and they probably committed some type of financial inconvenience to somebody, and so the court orders them to pay restitution in whatever amount it is to cover the property damage or whatever it might be, theft of their monetary values. So in the Tennessee Department of Corrections, you cannot get off of supervision owing restitution. If it comes to your expiration date and you owe restitution, we do violate for that. They get a bond, they go in, bond out, and we monitor. The judge will then begin to monitor restitution payments. And then I'll let Trey kind of go into the registry compliance for sex offenders.
So in our unit, we are a little bit different than regular probation officers.
I grabbed this. My mouth is so dry. I'm sorry.
That regular side of the house doesn't have to do. There's also certain things that they do that we don't. So the registry compliance, we are the largest registering agency in Tennessee. That means we have the most people under our supervision as far as sex. I forget the number, it's a lot. We have 10 people. All of us have around 40. I have 44, which I think is the largest at the moment, but that can fluctuate all the way up to 50. And some only have like 30. So we'll say about 400 people. When you start looking at local agencies, those are the alternatives to being on supervision with us. When you complete probation or you're not on probation, you register with a local department. So you go to the sheriff's office or the city police department. We have the most by far in Tennessee. TBI runs the registry. We go to training with TBI so we can update and keep the registry accurate for our people under our supervision. The registry, you can look it up. It's public. It's immediate. So as soon as I enter something that's updated, it reflects on the public website. It includes their phone numbers, their electronic IDs, their addresses, their workplace. It won't say the name of the workplace. It will give an address though on the public side. On our side for law enforcement, that's a bunch more details about their background, what their charges were. I think on the public website you can see some of their criminal history. It just gives us a little bit more detail to understand who we're working with and what their prior history was. They have to register on a quarterly basis, so they register in March, June, September, and December. If they miss those dates and do not communicate with us, that's a violation of the registry. There are some offenders that are considered sexual offenders and not violent. So the violent people have to register quarterly. Sexual offenders have to register once a year. It's usually around their birthday. There is a charge for that. It's about $150 a year for both parties. They have to pay that. We monitor that to ensure that they do pay it, and it just helps keep everybody employed in the registry up front. Are there any questions on the registry? Because a lot of people, how many of you have actually looked at your registry? Usually as you get older, that's something you start paying attention to. One thing that when I tell people to, when they're living in densely populated areas like Johnson City, Kingsport, one thing you don't see on the registry when you're looking at the map with all the dots is the homeless population. We have a high homeless population that is registered sex offenders. They don't pop up. So there are people that you can search by name to find, but they're not going to pop up on a map. Just keep that in mind. Usually those people are in the cities because they need resources that are offered nearby. I think that's just about it for the registry compliance for this part. If there's something that I forgot, I'll bring it up when I talk again later.
Okay, really quick. I kind of want to go over what this is called, this pro-social attitudes and relationships is, and this anti-social attitudes and relationships is. So at the moment, this is TDOC's focus as far as which domains are prioritized when we go to do treatment plans and programmings and things like that. So TDOC within the last year has begun implementing what's called integrated behavioral strategies. It's used in states like California and Virginia, and a lot of states are adopting these practices. And kind of what these practices are, kind of like along the lines of therapy, we create intrinsic motivation using motivational interviewing and other forms of other techniques such as effective use of reinforcement, effective use of disapproval, and like effective use of authority. And basically what that means is we kind of talk to them about the consequences. We try to link the consequences of their behaviors to their antisocial attitudes and then the pros to their pro-social attitudes and relationships. So it looks like the department's going to continue in this direction. It's a lot of really good work. We do a lot of important stuff, and this just kind of help change behavior. I know I'm not really explaining it that well, but you will get a lot of good training on these techniques, and a lot of these techniques are used in mental health fields and in case management. So just keep that in mind. Like Trey said, we do have a lot of good training. TDOC will really shape you up for moving on to other agencies if that's something that someone wants to do one day. Case management experience is really great to have. You are in law enforcement, but this position is also social work. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. We're going to go more into some of the trainings, week-long trainings that the department offers here in a little bit, but I just kind of wanted to throw that in there. So yeah, I'll let you take over.
I hate PowerPoint, so I'm not going to read all of them. Let me just look this over. Okay, so the big difference between our side of the house and regular side of the house is we are in the field way more just because it's a higher public safety risk. Regular side of the house, the goal is to leave someone better than when they came in. That's also our goal, but Tennessee does not believe that sex offenders can be rehabilitated. That's the state's view on it. With that, we run on a containment model. We want to contain sex offenders and lower their opportunity to risk to reoffend. So that means we're very involved. Being a sex offender on supervision is not fun. It's not fun to be on supervision at all, but when you're on our side of the house, we are very involved in your life. You can't work at anywhere that we don't approve. You can't live anywhere that we don't approve. Most of the time, it's due to the registry compliance that I was talking about. It can't be within 1,000 feet of a park, school, playground, a church that has a daycare, anything that's oriented to children Can't do that. There are a lot of court cases out there that are trying to strike down the registry, but I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. It is something that I believe does improve community safety, but only if people are using it. Earlier when I said how many of you have looked at the registry, one person raised their hand, which when I was, how old is everybody? Roughly 18 to 21, 25, somewhere in there. When I was in that age range, I didn't look at the registry. That was the last thing on my mind. As you get older, as you look to start buying a house and developing life, in one area, that's something that you're going to want to take into consideration. You're going to want to know who is around, where risks are. So us being in the field more, we get exposed to things that the regular side of the house doesn't typically see. My first 3 months on the job, we found a 14-year-old girl in a sex offender's closet that was hiding. They were having a consensual relationship. We got him charged with stat rape. So that's 3 months out of the academy. I was 22 at the time, or 23 at the time. That's a lot for me to process at 23. So you can imagine through 4 years of this stuff, we found things that really open your eyes to why the registry is important and why being in the field and having a supervision that is very invasive is important. But going back to the job, we don't allow anybody to work anywhere without our approval. You can't, as a sex offender, work anywhere you want. You can't work at McDonald's because McDonald's hires children. You can't work at the mall because the mall has a playground. It has the little motorized scooter that are animals. We caught one guy working there. That's a violation, obviously. So we're very invasive. We're very, very much in the field more than a regular officer. There's just a higher need for us to be in the field. The registry treatment and polygraphs. So I've already touched on the registry. The registry sets their sex offender rules. If they're on probation, they also have the probation rules. So on community supervision for life, they have their set of rules. And obviously, if they're on parole, they have a separate set of rules as well. Treatment, every sex offender, well, it used to be every sex offender. Now it's probably 80% of sex offenders that come on to supervision have to attend sex offender treatment. Sex offender treatment is once a week. Usually it's between an hour and a half, and they are self-pay. So usually they have to pay it every week. After a month, it's usually about $120 bucks a month, unless you are deemed indigent, and then you get a fee waiver provided by us. We would rather have people in sex offender treatment than not. If they violate treatment rules, so treatment has their set of rules. If they violate treatment rules, it's a violation of our rules. Polygraphs, they do take yearly polygraphs. It is required by their standards of supervision. A polygraph usually goes into, have you had any contact with children? Have you been around any children? It even dives into their prior history. It talks about outside of their known offense, did you have any sexual relations with any minors or anyone that was non-consensual? So it's very in-depth. These are things that sex offenders have to do constantly. My favorite thing is when I get a TBI tip and it says that we haven't went out and checked on an offender. We have to see our guys 3 times a month right off the jump for at least 6 months, sometimes to a year. As they progress through treatment, they can lower their risk level or in supervision level. So I see mandatory everybody once a month. There might be a handful that have completed treatment and been on so long that they're now once every other month. But in those cases, I still have to go out in the field to see them. It's never, I'm not involved, I'm not knowing what's going on. I don't know what their house looks like. We try to go in every house every time and search pretty regularly. One thing that we've kicked up more recently is phone searches. As everything goes digital, sex offenders typically move to the digital platform. A lot of child exploitation charges, child sex abuse material is found all the time. There's not a month that we've hit in the last 4 months that we haven't found some kind of child sex abuse. Recently we found cases that involved an individual having a sexual relationship with a minor. That led to him being charged with rape of a child. So there's a lot of things that go into sex offender supervision, and none of them are typically good. We're very invasive, and that's why. If we took a hands-off approach, the community wouldn't be as safe, just plain speaking. Our focus is monitoring sex offenders in the community. Going back to what I touched on just a minute ago, if I'm only asking my people to come see me at the office, that's the only place I know. If I don't know what their home looks like, I'm not going to know if something's off. If they have children or if they don't have children. If they have children and they got child toys, it's normal. It could be looked at as acceptable. If they don't have children and I roll up and they have a bunch of kids' toys laying out, that's going to prompt a deeper investigation into it. Because why would you? One thing we used to do, it's kind of been rolled back and modified, but we still do it on Halloween. It's a very child-oriented holiday. Sex offenders are not allowed to have sex offenders with us, supervised by us, are not allowed to have their lights on. They are not allowed to give out candy. We used to run, Juliana was a part of it, a month-long operation. We would typically take, a week?
A week of very long days.
Yeah, a week straight of 12, sometimes 15-hour days of searching sex offenders top to bottom, everybody.
And like he said, like we've rolled up on houses where, and they would debrief. We would debrief not really debrief, but kind of do some prep work before we go over to these houses. Do they have kids? What are their charges? I don't know those things because I'm not an SCU. So we would have a SCU lead, and I would always ask, do they have kids? Because we've rolled up on houses where there's not supposed to be kids. There's not, they don't have children there. And we found baby clothes and toys and things like that. I was actually with Trey one time when we actually found a child in a house and he was not supposed to be there. And he had been there for about 3 or 4 days. And so we were able to kind of get that situation handled. But yes.
So sex offenders as a whole are very complex. Their risk levels. So she touched on the risk assessment. They have to do that risk assessment, but they also have a separate risk assessment that assesses their sex offender risk. Typically, all of ours are moderate to high. There might be a few low moderates, but most sex offenders are moderate to high risk to reoffend. If they have multiple sex offenses, immediately high. So anytime their BASER score, that risk assessment that assesses their sex offense risk, anytime they are high, they're on GPS. Most of our people, when they come on, immediately get put on GPS. We monitor that for 90 days. We're not monitoring that for violation purposes. We're monitoring that to see what their normal routine looks like so we can modify that. Most of the time, it doesn't end in violation when you're on GPS because we can get out ahead. If they're going into zones, most of the time they either don't know or they're there maliciously. If they're there maliciously, we get them arrested and they're gone. If they don't know, we can clarify where these boundaries are to lower their risk to reoffend. The graduated sanctions, something that we do that regular typically doesn't do, but does have the power to, is we put our people on GPS. If we get a tip that someone's going into parks, here recently I had a tip come in that an individual was going into a park with a 6-pack of beer and binoculars. Put him on GPS because we found out that he was going. We violated him, and when he got back out, we put him on GPS. He's on GPS to this day. There are people that will never come on GPS. They're on either until they get off supervision or they pass away. Those are reserved for your extremely high risk. Typically, a lot of sex offenses involving minors. We do home searches at a high clip. We do phone searches at a high clip. Most of our electronic searches, we find a lot of issues or violations in the phone. Here recently, we have found some on hidden laptops, gaming devices, Xbox. That's a big one right now. They're on there trying to contact children. Roblox is a big one. Any of the apps that are not your typical Telegram is a big one. If you have Telegram, delete it. It's the worst. Stay off of Telegram. But most of the time, they're trying to hide things. Sex offenders are allowed to have all of those things. They're allowed to have Twitter, all of the apps, all of the social medias, but they have to register them with us. Our number one violation that we write across the state is a violation of the registry for not divulging electronic IDs. Typically, they love to say that they just forgot or didn't think it was significant. You look into it, they're on there talking to anybody and everybody. Sex offenders are completely different, and I'm sure everybody here knows that, but sex offenders are a different animal, and their supervision has to be different. It has to be invasive. It offers a lot more fun. I wish we'd bring back the ability to run more operations, because I thought that was something that the regular side of the house really enjoyed. It was something that we enjoyed. But now we're more focused on finding things in phones than we are searching homes. We do still do home searches with our unit, but we typically don't have big operations that involve the regular side of the house. Just about covers everything on this page. Back to you.
Oh, okay. So, like I said earlier, we offer a lot of different roles other than just probation officer, correctional officer. Some of the more common roles are our court specialists. We are blessed with some really great court specialists in our district. They are wonderful ladies. They stay very busy. They work hand in hand with your DAs, your public defenders, and your judges. We do communicate with those, what we call shareholders, in our daily duties. However, the court specialists, they really have really good rapport with these shareholders, and they're able to get a lot done. They handle, if you go and do a violation on someone and they're incarcerated and they have a court hearing, we don't always go to court. We typically go to court if we're subpoenaed to give testimony, but our violations are usually enough evidence, like I said before, and our court specialists, they'll either get up sometimes and do the testimony. They'll handle all the court paperwork as far as referrals and getting them to come into our intake and get them set up in our system. They also handle all of our revocation and reinstatements. So whenever an individual has been violated, but the judge is going to give them another chance at supervision, usually contingent on completing some form of long-term treatment, or whatever it might be, the court specialists typically handle our revocations and reinstatements. Again, our behavioral health specialists. So our behavioral health specialists, individuals with backgrounds in like masters in social work, masters in psychology, things of that nature, they're the ones who conduct our alcohol and drug assessments, our mental health assessments, and they also recently have started conducting classes with our Atlas program. I'm not going to get into Atlas a whole lot. It's kind of a newer platform, but they just run like anger management classes, treatment classes, things like that. Again, very important ladies. Usually they do a lot of really good work for us. They handle a lot of our referrals. They have a lot of resources for grants, for things like, you know, any type of frontier health program, Creekside, Woodridge, anything like that. We have our report writers. Those are our PSI writers. Your PSI's pre-sentencing report. Those are the reports that a lot of courts request before they do sentencing. I know they're more heavily used in Sullivan County than in what I deal with Washington County for the majority. I deal with other courts as well, but that's just the majority I deal with. We do use PSIs. However, I know Sullivan County really uses those pretty heavy in their sentencing. Again, it's usually like a big packet, and it goes over all their criminal history, drug use, family, things of that nature. Victim service coordinators. I'm not gonna lie, I don't have a lot of information about terminal agencies or the victim service coordinators. I don't really get to work with them on a daily basis, but I'm sure we could probably imagine what they do. Okay.
So when we have registry updates, the TAC is trained by TBI to ensure that our updates are accurate. That's my dealings with the TAC. I'm sure they have other responsibilities as well. But anytime that I put in information or they run an audit on my guys, anything that's wrong or could be wrong in the agency, they send to me to correct. The one thing I didn't mention about specialized caseload unit, regular probation officers, their typical work schedule is 8 to 4:30. It is a flex schedule. I think you're going to hit on that, so I won't go too far into it. But we, as sex offender officers, are on call 24/7. On the weekends, we have a schedule that we rotate on. So every weekend, if you're not on call, you get the weekend off. But through the week, you are responsible 24/7, constantly. If you do have something that comes up, you have to communicate with your partner that you wouldn't be available. But anytime a GPS is cut, anytime a tamper with the GPS happens, anytime a GPS runs dead, so when it was 4 feet of snow and a battery died, we have to go out. It's not ideal, but it is worth ensuring that that person is in compliance. I think that was really the only thing that I was sitting over here thinking that I didn't mention that's a little bit different than for regular side probation.
So one thing I'll kind of hit on, this is kind of a lot going on, but our cognitive behavioral programming. I didn't really get to talk a whole lot about programming. At the moment, we have a lot of digital programming, and we also have some in-person programming and call-in programming. When COVID hit, a lot of the in-person programming was kind of done away with. The only thing we really have in person are your anger management classes and your like relapse prevention classes. Those are conducted at the CRC, which is our Community Resource Center. And I know the BHSs are now running, which is our behavioral health specialists, are now running those 6-week-long classes where it's all kind of combined. But most of our programming is either digital, where they can work on it at their own pace. So they'll have some sort of timeline, like 4 weeks, 6 weeks to get class done digitally. Those are only for our moderate offenders and our low offenders. Our high risk offenders are required to do call-in classes. That can kind of be challenging because we have to work around their work schedule, but there are classes offered all around the state. So I have put individuals in call-in classes from Murfreesboro or from Memphis or whatever it might be, where it's call-in, they can do that. But yeah, so they just do the call-in classes, and those are typically pretty long. We have one that's 26 weeks, and then we have another one that's about 52 weeks. So year long. The 52 weeks, they call in once a week. The 26-week one, they call in twice a week. And these classes are an hour and a half to 2 hours. So they do cover a lot of material. As far as who we put in what kind of programming, some are court ordered. So you'll have your individuals, a lot of times with our domestic offenders, aggravated domestic assault, things like that, they're required to do what's called a SAFE class. That's our domestic abuse class. Again, if they score high, they'll do a call-in. If they score moderate, they can, or low, they can do the digital. Another thing is, as far as who we put in programming, we use a lot of different things. We use officer discretion. We do results on a TCUD, which is Texas Christian University assessment. That it's about 56 questions. It goes over all types of, it goes over all drug history, but mainly focuses on drug history in the last 12 months. So we have a bunch of different tools that we use to assess mental health and alcohol and drug. And a lot of times, if it's not court ordered, it is up to the officer to use their discretion and to use the materials in front of them to determine whether they need programming or not. Looks like that's about it on this page. I'll leave it for that.
Home visits are pretty self-explanatory. We're going in to see where they're sleeping, what their sleep situation is, if they live with their parents, who's in the house, just typical things like that. A resident search. Anytime we do a home visit, we're doing a plain visit or plain view search. Anytime we want to go deeper, it would be a resident search. And that also includes their electronic ID. We're just going to start pulling out drawers, going through closets, going into drawers, any hidey holes that we might suspect. A lot of them are found in, a lot of drugs are found in the floor registers. I found them in outlets, just all types of things. But that's really the big difference. Home visit, we're just walking in, plain view. A resident search, we're going way more in depth.
One thing I'll add is one of the important things about the residence verification and doing the home visit is the state likes us to focus on getting to know these individuals on a more in-depth basis, which includes communicating with their family members, whoever may be in the house, their children. So you really do get to know a lot of your people. I mean, I know a lot of their kids. I know things that are going on with their kids, medical issues. I mean, as much information you can get from individuals, it is very important. But the home search, yes, you're verifying residence, but you're doing a lot of different things all at once when you're actually doing a home visit. Like he hit on plain view search. The importance of plain view search is how I kind of explain it to my individuals on my caseload is I do what's called a walkthrough. So we walk through the home with the individual while we're talking to family. Usually you go into a home with your partner. You'll never go on a home visit by yourself, ever. And that's for safety related concerns. But if it's my individual, my partner I'm with, they're going to be the one, looking around, seeing if they find anything while I talk to my person, while I communicate with family members, things like that, and vice versa. So when my partner has someone, I'm looking around the house. I'm making sure there's nothing out of the ordinary. I have been on searches with Officer Cook during blackout where I have found ammunition in a closet. It was actually on a shelf. I didn't touch anything, although we were doing searches. In that case, something like plain view search can lead to a search. So if you're not really going in there with the intention of searching, you will see things in plain sight that will lead to a physical search. That search was of a sex offender's home, and we ended up finding 2 rifles, I believe, and that was down in Morristown. So plain view searches are very effective as well, even though you're just walking through. So that's what I'll say about that.
Real quick, sorry. And we're not just looking for violation stuff. We can be looking for health concerns. Anytime children are involved, we can get child services. We've saved a lot of animals by calling
Animal control.
Animal control. Calling animal control as well. We're not just there for the offender and potential violations.
That's actually my first concern when I'm going into a house where I know children reside. Is I always go by the child's room, make sure everything's clean, make sure they have beds. Like he said before, like I know they see a lot more crazy stuff than us, but you will find people's living conditions are very subpar. And you'll go into houses that are filthy, and we've been in a lot of houses where there's animal feces stuck to the floor, on the walls. And so again, like my biggest concern is there kids there? And if so, making sure they have everything they need. In addition, this doesn't really have anything to do with home checks, but if they do test positive for methamphetamines, usually means there's methamphetamines in the household. We do referrals to DCS if they do have custody of their kids and they're residing with their children, just for safety related issues. So.
So there are many opportunities for professional development. As Trey was said earlier, TDOC does encourage attendance of these. It's not mandatory, but it does look good when you're going for promotions, different things, and it's just professional growth. So they have Command College. We have a Commanding Success Institute, Commissioner's Leadership Academy. I don't know the length of these. You all probably know this more than I do.
They're typically.
And normally at TC8, our Tennessee Correction Academy in Tullahoma. I lead, which is individually leading, educating, achieving, and developing. Then we have LEAP. LEAP is our newest one, if I'm not mistaken. Our management and leadership learning pyramid. A lot of this, the pyramid, I know you can do online, and it takes you class by class to get to the pyramid. Then Professional Management Academy. We have the Tennessee Government Management Institute, Tennessee Government Professionals Institute, and Lead Tennessee. So as you can see, there's lots of opportunity. Once you get with TDOC, we're always made aware of all the classes when they're starting. It's several times a year that these are offered. You apply, your leadership has to approve your attendance. It's a good time to come together with your coworkers across the state. A lot of team building activities, that sort of thing. But a lot of professional growth and opportunity for professional development with TDOC. I will go over as far as the minimum requirement for a probation and parole officer, because I know Northeast State, it's not a 4-year bachelor's degree program. I know you use Northeast State to go to ETSU to continue your education. Is that what most everyone's plan is, or? Okay. So with that in mind, as Eric was saying earlier, I did work for Northeast Correctional Mountain City. I recruited correctional officers before switching to community supervision. So with that in mind, the minimum qualification for an entry-level probation and parole officer 1 is a 4-year degree. As Juliana was saying, it does not have to be a criminal justice degree. It can be just a bachelor's degree of any kind. And but where I'm leading to with that is you can get a job at the prison, at a facility, at 18 years old. You have to have a driver license, be 18 years old, no felony convictions, that sort of thing. A lot of people go into the correctional system to gain experience as a springboard to go to this side, to go to probation and parole. Because a minimum requirement is the 4-year degree, or you can substitute relevant experience, including law enforcement, year for year. So in other words, if you have 4 years at corrections, you would qualify to interview, to be chosen for an interview for the probation and parole. So that is one thing I want you to keep in mind as you're looking at your education. And the starting pay right now for a PPO1 is $41.38. And also, as Juliana mentioned, once you have met your 12-month probationary period and you have been doing well in your job, you will promote to a probation and parole officer 2. That's an automatic flex, and you'll get a raise at that time. And it goes to, I think the total is $43.58. I didn't bring my cheat sheet with me. But do keep that in mind, that if you do not qualify right now, if you're interested in getting some experience on the correction side, because honestly, when we all go into it and start out, none of us know what to expect or if it's something that we will like. A lot of people want to just use it to get into the police academy, but end up staying with Department of Correction. So there's lots of opportunity. It's not just the security side of it. We have the correctional counselors, we have the behavioral health specialists. So there's lots of opportunities for a career in the Department of Correction. And once you get your foot in the door, even with the Department of Correction, if you get in there and get your foot in the door and you decide, I'm not sure if this is where I want to go, you can always do an internal transfer to another entity of the state. The reason I encourage state careers is the benefits are phenomenal. The opportunity for professional development is great. when you are employed with us for 6 months, you are eligible to attend a class, one class per semester for free. You get a fee waiver, and you can continue your education that way. If you complete your degree and it is in something that pertains to the job that you're in with the state, then you are submitted for a 5% promotion. So there's lots of opportunity, there's lots of encouragement to better yourself in the Department of Correction, and I'm sure that's probably with every state entity, but the Department of Correction is where all my experience has been, and it has been a great experience. Like I said, I've got 25 years in. We can retire with full benefits at 30 years. So when I reach my 30 years, I'm going to be 58 years old and can be retired with full benefits, with a pension, with a 401k. So it's just, I know at the age that you are at, you don't really think about benefits a lot. You don't think about retirement, but that is something I have a daughter that's 28, another daughter that's 22. My 28-year-old, we have always, as soon as she was in school, she's a nurse. I was like, contribute to that 401k. You know, there's going to come a time that you're going to be really happy that you did it. It's money that you'll be putting away, you won't miss. So, are there any questions about anything that they have covered? I think Juliana and Trey did a phenomenal job. Very informative. It was a great PowerPoint. They're very well versed and very well knowledge in their job. I'm pretty impressed. Like I said, I started in June. I transferred over in June. So I have about 150, I think, people that I manage all their HR things that need to be done. So I'm kind of still getting to know everyone, but I think these two were phenomenal.
I agree.
So.
Let's give them a round of applause.
But does anybody have questions regarding anything that they do or that they went over, or anything on the HR side of it? Any questions at all?
This will make a lot more sense here in a few weeks when we get to intermediate sanctions. I know right now we got them in here early with all the snow days, barely met. But this will make a lot more sense. We'll look at the registry. We'll talk about intermediate sanctions. We'll talk about why intermediate sanctions are very important. And we'll talk about a lot of that. And then your average caseload is what, about?
At the moment, with the implementation of the new pilot program, it's about 60 to 65. We used to have a lot higher caseloads. I was having around 85, 90 people. We are one of the bigger counties, but we're not the biggest. I know Knoxville officers carry about 150 sometimes. It just really depends on if all of the positions are filled in the office. But at the moment, I carry about 65 people.
And I must say, the Department of Correction, the commissioner has been very good about getting these folks raises, especially at the prison. I think now, after about a year, they're 60-some thousand.
Yeah,
62.
60 plus thousand.
So at 18 years old, you go work the prison for a year, and at 19 years old, you're making 60-some thousand a year plus your TCRS benefits and everything. Incredible. We've had several do that out of here. And then I highly recommend what these folks do. My wife thoroughly enjoyed working with them. But what she was wanting to do, nothing against them, is just what she was looking to do was a little more specialized. And so, like Miss Judy said, you know, once you're in the system, it makes it easier to go from position to position. Once you're in, you gotta get that foot in the door, right? It's like anything else. So, but my wife, she said she'd go back in a heartbeat. You know, if something happened with her current position. So,
as far as the pay goes, Judy went over the starting pay. We do have, the state does implement pay for performance. So every year you'll have your, and Judy knows more about it than I do, but you'll have your employee evaluation. Depending on your score of your employee evaluation, you typically do get a raise a couple months later. So yeah, that starting pay for supervision is in the 40s, but you have the ability to earn a lot more than that.
That starting pay may seem low, which it did to me when I first started. But when you start comparing what local authorities, local police departments, and sheriff's office make starting out, there's no comparison.
agreed.
We get paid better. I always say we get paid better to deal with less shit. So just keep that in mind. If I could give you any advice, you're all young, you're all just getting an education right now and haven't really started your career, build relationships now. It's not something that I started doing until I was in my job, but we work closely with TBI. We work close. I've been on ATF raids. I've talked to DEA. I've talked to the marshals. I've talked to federal probation. You can springboard this into relationships with those three-letter agencies that everyone wants to work for. If you put in the time to develop yourself and the relationships that you have with people.
Kind of going off that, I know when I was in college, everybody kind of wanted to work for those agencies, and they do phenomenal work. They have a lot of hardworking people, and their work is important. But I don't want people to forget how important correctional work is, because yes, these agencies build cases against these individuals, but they come to us afterwards. Whether, I know DEA and FBI, that might be the Bureau of Prisons, and then maybe the federal probation side. But TBI and things like that, they build investigations, and those individuals end up coming to us. And we do a lot of work helping these individuals and making a difference in their lives. It's not about community safety is our biggest priority, but my second biggest priority is, like Trey said, making sure they leave in a better position than they came to us. And I know we have funny stories, we have happy stories, we have a lot. But just for example, I had a guy this week. He's in the recovery community. He's been in recovery for 2 years, and he does a lot of mechanic work for individuals in the recovery community. So he fixes their cars for free, things like that. And he has a dream to open his own garage one day. And so that's something we did on his case management. That's the goal. He wants to own a shop. So I actually stumbled across some information about some programs that offer business loans to individuals with felony backgrounds. And he did his research. He looked into these programs. He made the calls necessary. And I got a text this week that he has his business license, his EIN number, everything. And he told me, and it's just made my whole week, he said, "Thank you for believing in me." And so we do really make a difference. We do a lot of important work. And so I just want y'all to know that.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Any more questions?